Good day, my wonderful students. Life is amazing when we can do mathematics, specifically geometry. I love this section of work. Now, we are going to look at the first of three sections in geometry. The first section that we are going to have a look at is straight line geometry. In other words, the geometry of lines crossing, parallel lines, all of those kind of things. But this video specifically will tackle the geometry theorems. So if I look at the geometry theorems, my students always love to call it FUNTOX, FUNTOX. And you will see there that I basically split it in half. You've got fun on the one side, tox on the other hand, okay? Now, the fun part of it is specifically got to do with parallel lines, F-U-N, because maths is fun and geometry is fun. But the fun part, the F, the U, the N, specifically work only with parallel lines, and this is crucial for all geometry you are going to do from grade 8 through to matric. So let's start with the F. First of all, the angles opposite each other, corresponding angles if you have a transversal line connecting your parallel lines. Sure, that's big words. In other words, that line there we call a transversal line. The angles, those blue little crosses, are equal. Why? Because they are corresponding angles. And when we give a reason for geometry, please remember, for every statement you make, there's got to be a reason. Otherwise, you're going to lose the marks. And especially if you are in a government school, they are very strict on your reasons. So what reason must I give? Well, we're simply going to say corresponding angles. But please be careful. When you use corresponding angles as a reason, you have to specify which lines are parallel. Because corresponding angles is not always equal. They're equal when they are parallel lines. Let's look at the second letter, the U. If I look at the U, if they are parallel, those two angles that's enclosed in that little U is going to add up to 180 degrees. And the special name we call for it for angles adding up to 180 degrees, remember this word, supplementary. If the lines are parallel, then the co-interior angles add up to 180, so they are supplementary. So the reason, again, you must give is co-interior angles and specify which lines are parallel. Now let's go on to the N, the one that is used a lot. The N is for alternate angles. So those two angles, if I use that N, is always going to be equal. And we are going to call those alternate angles. Now I can be a bit of a stickler and say it's not alternating, alternate. And we use the reason alternate angles, and because there's parallel lines, you specify which sides are parallel. Now let's look at the right hand side, the T, the O, the X. Now that has nothing to do with parallel lines. So if I look at the T, the O, and the X, first of all, the T says the adjacent angles on a straight line. Adjacent meaning literally they are separated by a line. Not that they're just next to each other, but they are separated. They are joined by a single line. Those two angles next to each other are also supplementary, so they add up to 180. And our reason we are going to give is angles on a straight line. this one is used a lot. It is used a lot. But interestingly enough, there's actually a converse for this one as well. But converses we'll talk about in a video coming up later. Let's have a look at the O. The O, I think all of us know that if I've got a line and I've got a revolution, so from one side all the way around to that same point, no matter how many angles I put in, they've got to add up to 360 degrees. The reason we are going to give the examiners is angles around a point. Now, some teachers might say to you, well, you can use revolution angles as well. But please find out from your teacher which one is acceptable for your school, for your situation. Now, let's look at the X as our last one in fun talks. Okay? So, the X says that the vertically opposite. Think about looking your mate in the eye. If I can look someone directly in the eye, it means we are the same height. Now, this is the same with angles. If I've got an X, the angles opposite one another must be the same. And we are going to call this vertically opposite angles. Not just opposite, but vertically opposite angles. So whenever you start a geometry question, right at the top, fun talks. And I promise you, you will eventually be able to do maths with all the other theorems that come as well. In our next video, ladies and gents, we are going to start discussing problems, from easy questions to some really tough questions. So this is Mr. VG signing out. Have a beautiful day and please check out for the next video. Keep well. Cheers.